in various colors. Patty rolls the hot glass on the end of her pipe over the frit on the table. It starts to melt all these tiny little pieces that stick to the surface of the glass. We'll give her a layer of whatever color she chooses. We're starting with an opal rose. It's a lovely pink. And you might be able to see we get a lot of little bits sticking out from the surface of the glass. That's because the glass was not quite hot enough to melt those frit pieces all the way down. Just enough to make them stick to the surface. So we're going to melt all those down into one piece by putting this into our reheating furnace right here. The reheating furnace is a lot like the melting furnace over this side of the shop. They're both sitting at 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. So the only difference is the reheating furnace doesn't have that bowl of glass on the inside of it. We'll simply use that side to heat up our glass again once it gets too cold. Now we're rolling in a color called mushroom. Looks like criminy mushrooms. We've been messing around with this color a little bit today. It's got some interesting properties. It reacts very with the opal rose. And I believe we have one more roll of color that we're going to do. Patty laid out a little bit of ruby gold onto the table there. Now it's called ruby gold because it does in fact have gold in it. You get asked quite a bit what makes the different colors of glass, and that's actually different metal oxides that they combine with clear glass. Different combinations will give you different colors. For instance, that ruby gold does indeed have some gold in it. If Patty was rolling her glass in some blue grit, that would have a lot of copper or cobalt inside of it. Alright, that's going to be it for the frit. So we're not going to see Patty take any more rolls from the table there. She's not going to be going into the melting furnace any more time. There should be just enough glass and color to make the big, beautiful piece that we'll be putting away. We're going to start to shape up this glass. Patty's going to get this hot. She wants to center all this back up on the bubble. When you're rolling your glass into the frit, sometimes the bubble can get knocked off to the side. So she's going to be using a tool called a block. This is what a block looks like. It's essentially a big wet wooden spoon made out of cherry wood. The shape is carved on the inside here. It's the perfect shape to push the glass into. So when it's placed, everything inflates evenly. We're going to get a nice light bulb shape. Now these are made of wood. We soak them in water so they last a little bit longer. That's why you're seeing some sparks come off of the top of it. You see some steam coming off as well. And he's going to inflate. Should be getting that light bulb. Perfect. And she's going to swing the pipe over her head. That's actually going to stretch the glass out using gravity. In fact, over to the table we started at, Patty's going to start pointing up the tip of the bubble. Now that pointed tip that Patty's making right now is actually going to be the bottom of our vessel. By making that tip pointed, she's pulling extra glass off the sides of the bubble down to where the bottom of the piece is going to be. That's going to give it a little bit more weight on the bottom. That table that she's using is called a Marver table. It's a steel top. Steel's a poor conductor of heat, which makes it a great tool in glass blowing. You can shape glass and cool it down at the same time with one of these tables. Now we're going to begin the process of getting the general size and shape to the piece. Patty's going to sit down at the bench and use all sorts of tools to get different aesthetic shapes put in. Meanwhile, Mike is going to be blowing air into the mouthpiece of the blowpipe on the other end of the bench. So we can kind of get two moves done at once here. Right now, Patty is using probably our most advanced technology on the stage, which is a wad of newspaper that we soaked in some water. And then she's going to use a tool called a pair of jacks to incise a line just off the head of the blowpipe. It's got the diameter of a quarter. It's going to be something called the jack line constriction. It's something that is an important part of all pieces of blown glass. It's going to come in handy when we're ready to work on the lip of the piece. We're not quite there yet, but it's a good idea to get that done pretty early on. So this is what the jacks look like. It's one of the most popular tools amongst glass blowers. It's essentially a very long pair of tweezers. You have some gold blades on the bottom, flat plane up top, with all sorts of different uses. You're going to see Patty use them in a variety of ways through the demonstration. Here's our sophisticated wad of newspaper. We like the newspaper because that's about as close to the glass as you can get without actually touching it with your hands. Not a great idea to put your hand on some glass that's just inside a 2,000 degree furnace, but we actually don't feel any of that heat with the newspaper. Give you a nice hand feel for the glass at the same time. A lot of people tend to think that you need a lot of breath power in order to blow glass. Actually not true. It's all relative to how much heat is in the glass. Right when Patty sits down after she's come out of the furnace, the glass is hot enough where it wouldn't take more breath power than it would to blow bubbles out of a bubble water. But as the glass cools down, it's going to get more and more difficult for the assistant to blow air into. Another tool you'll probably see us use quite a bit is going to be the wooden paddle. Pretty straightforward. It's great for making things flat, straight for blocking heat. It can be used in a number of different ways. This is probably one of the first tools in glass blowing. Stretch this out a little bit more. I was using the newspaper to make all of the walls even on the piece. Alright, so this basket there, we just made the bottom of the piece. Mikey covered the end of the blowpipe with his thumb. That trapped all the air inside. I used a wooden paddle to make that flat because Mikey trapped his hand, or trapped all the air on the inside of the blowpipe. He was basically giving me something to push against. And Patty was using the newspaper in order to get all the sides nice and even. Now we're going to begin the process of transferring this. We have the general size and shape to the piece that we're making. The bottom is all shaped up. We need to start working on the top, but there's a blowpipe in the way. We need to get that out of here. So Mike is going to prepare what's called a punty. He's taking a little bit of glass from the melting furnace. He's going to shape that up on the arbor table there. And they're going to stick that punty onto the bottom of the piece, and then using the jack-line constriction that Patty made earlier, you're going to be able to break this piece off from the blowpipe and work on the top. You need to have the right timing, the right temperature to do this. If not, this piece will come crashing down to the ground. So we stuck the punty on there. While the punty is still hot, they have an opportunity to make sure this piece is as close to center as they can make it. Alright, watch this, folks. A little water on the constriction, a light tap. That is hot.
Oh.
Alright, that worked. That doesn't always work. We need to keep working. So Mike's going to get a little heat onto the piece and bring it back to Patty at the bench. By heating this piece up, he's lengthened the window of time in which the punty is still hot. Patty's taking that opportunity to make sure this piece is exactly on center. If anybody here's throwing clay on a pottery wheel, of course, very similar concept. That piece of clay needs to be in the exact center of the wheel. Otherwise, down the road, your finished product will look a little funny. It might not sit flat. You might have some weird shaped walls. Same concept in glass blowing. Everything needs to be exactly on center. Now we can begin to work on the lip of the piece. Because of that jack-line constriction that Patty made earlier, there's a lot of extra glass. It's very thick right there. We need to thin that out. So Patty's going to get that hot. Come to the bench and use a pair of tweezers to stretch that material out. And then he's going to use a pair of shears or metal scissors to cut all that extra material off. This is a move called trimming the lip. It's one of the most difficult things to learn when you begin glass blowing. There's a lot of things happening all at once. The hands are moving at two different speeds. It takes a lot of coordination. Now the most important thing here is going to be the heat in the lip of the piece. Patty needs to get that pretty hot before she sits down at the bench. If she was too cold while she attempted this, it would be like going into your kitchen and grabbing a glass out of the cupboard and trying to cut it with some scissors. It wouldn't work very well. The more heat we have in the material, the more we can manipulate it, the farther we can stretch it out, the faster we can cut it. It's a very delicate balance though, because patty can't get too much heat in the back of the teeth, otherwise it might get knocked off center. Which we just spent a lot of time trying to make sure that it was on center. You'll know that happens because they'll be flopping all over the place, but patty's very good at making sure that doesn't happen. Mikey's going to be standing by with a couple of wooden paddles. He's going to use those to block some of that radiant heat from hitting Patty's hands. We're also going to be cutting a little bit of this glass off. We want to make sure it doesn't curl back up and hit the glass. Then it will be stuck. Right, using those tweezers to pinch out that extra material. So it's going to lengthen the piece just a little bit. Then with a pair of shears, Patty's going to give this piece just a little bit of a haircut. Get a little bit of wax on the shears. That makes it a little bit more difficult to cut. Makes the scissors, the metal scissors, pretty slippery. So Mikey's cleaning those up right now with some hot clear glass. He's got a different pair that Patty's going to use here. Alright, now we have an evenly trimmed lip. Now there's all sorts of things that we can do to the lip of the piece, all sorts of tools and techniques that can get applied here. It's all up to the gaffer, it's all inside of Patty's head right now. We'll see what she decides to do each time she sits down at the bench. You better notice that she only has about a minute each time she sits down before she needs to heat the piece back up again. That is because the glass is cooling down very quickly. That means that each time that Patty sits down, she has to have a game plan in mind. She has to know exactly what she's doing. She can't be wasting any time making any decisions after she sits. That being said, Mikey and Patty are all going to make this look pretty easy. They've been doing this a while. It takes years of practice work with glass this thin and this high. So they're going to make this all look pretty simple, but this is years of glass blowing experience that you're watching. Using the blades of the jacks to make a constriction towards the top of the piece. That's going to create a tiny little cup towards the top. There's all sorts of things you can do with that. You can flare it open, you can close it off, you can leave it how it is. Patty's using a puffer right now. It's a metal cone with a straw attached. It's going to inflate the piece from the inside.
Okay. Wow.
This is what that puffer looks like. It's also called a soffietta. That's the Italian word for it. With this metal cone, you can insert that into an opening in the glass. As long as that opening doesn't go past the edge of the cone here, you can create a seal, thereby inflating the piece. It's actually the only way to inflate a piece when it's been knocked off. Putting the jacks on the inside of that opening, Patty's going to open up her grip as she's rotating the glass. It's going to lift up that opening, flare out that lip just a little bit. All right, folks, looks like we're done with this piece. What do y'all think?
Wow.
So we're going to get ready to put this away. Patty's going to be doing some finishing touches. Mikey's going to be getting some loading tools ready. We're going to be placing this inside a special oven that we have. It's going to hold all the glass we make for the day. So silver doors right there. It's something called our annealer oven. It's sitting at about 950 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to hold all the glass we make. Then before we go home, we're going to run a program that will gradually set the temperature down overnight. When we do that, there's a molecular change that happens in the glass. We'll pull it out after about 16 hours. It won't be so affected by temperature changes. If we were to leave this piece out without annealing it, within a matter of minutes, it would get too cold too quickly and it would shatter. We don't have to worry about that with the annealing process. So just like that blowpipe, Patty's going to put a little water onto the punty. A Light tap that off and ready to go in the oven.
와우.